Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time, we're going to be looking at a novel, From Chains to Wings, by Reg Butterfield. And it's a story all about different styles of leadership, which is always a relevant topic in the business world.
Absolutely. And I think what makes this book so fascinating is that it throws us right into the heart of a company that's undergoing some massive upheaval. You've
Sure.
got strikes, you've got political battles, there's even some sabotage going on. It's pretty intense
Oh,
stuff.
yeah, this is not your typical feel-good business story. This is high-stakes drama, but it's also a great opportunity for us to kind of dissect these different approaches to leadership.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that really stood out to me as I was reading this was how much it mirrors some of the challenges that businesses are facing today. I mean, the world is changing so rapidly. Technology is advancing at an incredible pace. And then you got this volatile political and economic landscape. It's like a perfect storm for companies.
Absolutely. And,
Yeah.
within this one company that Butterfield creates in the novel, we've actually got two separate organizations that are both struggling to adapt to this kind of turbulent environment. It's like they're both caught in the same storm, but with completely different captains at the helm.
That's a great analogy. I love that because it really highlights how the same challenges can be met with such vastly different approaches. And of course, as you can imagine, lead to very different outcomes.
Okay, so let's meet our captains. On the one hand, we have Victor, who is all about control. He believes in rigid hierarchies. He thinks a little fear is a good motivator. Keep everyone in line.
Yeah, Victor is a classic example of that old school top-down style of leadership. Set the plan, expect everyone to follow it to the letter, no questions asked.
And he's running the factory where worker discontent is just brewing.
Yeah, he's got this kind of cause and effect mindset. He believes he can predict and control every single outcome. But as the story unfolds, you'll see how that rigid approach becomes his Achilles heel.
And then we have Evelyn, who is leading a different part of the company. And she is almost the polar opposite of Victor. She is all about empowering her team, building trust through open communication. And she really embraces change as an opportunity.
Evelyn's style really embodies what we call a connectionist approach. It's like a network where everyone is connected, information flows freely, and instead of trying to control every single aspect of that network, she's focused on understanding the relationships between the different parts, encouraging collaboration and allowing that network to be flexible and resilient.
Sounds like she's leaning into the chaos rather than trying to fight against it. So what are some of the specific challenges that these two leaders are facing, both Victor and Evelyn?
Well, they're both dealing with these external pressures, right? You've got new legislation coming down the pike. You've got those supply chain disruptions that everyone's talking about these days. But internally, they're also grappling with this really interesting, evolving relationship between people and technology.
Okay, I'm intrigued. How does technology play into their leadership styles?
Well, Victor sees technology primarily as a tool for control. So think surveillance systems to monitor workers, stricter protocols, all designed to kind of tighten his grip on the operation.
So he's trying to use technology to force the outcomes that he wants.
Exactly. He thinks if he can gather enough data and control every variable, he can basically make the world bend to his will.
But isn't that kind of like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole?
Yeah, I mean, the modern world is messy. It's unpredictable. It's a network of networks that's constantly shifting and evolving. You can't just force it to conform to your predetermined plan.
So how does Evelyn approach technology differently?
Evelyn sees technology as an enabler, so she's using it to break down those traditional hierarchies and empower her team. Think collaborative platforms, open communication channels, things that facilitate information sharing and decision-making at all levels.
So she's using technology to build connections and strengthen her network.
Exactly. She understands that in today's world. Success isn't about controlling information. It's about facilitating its flow and enabling people to make informed decisions quickly.
And so to use your ship analogy, Victor's trying to steer his ship through the storm with an iron grip, while Evelyn is adjusting her sails and riding the waves. What happens when the seas get really rough?
Well, things come to a head when the discontent in Victor's factory finally boils over and the workers decide to go on strike.
Oh boy, that sounds like a recipe for disaster.
It is, and Victor's response, he doubles down on control.
Oh no.
He restricts information, tightens security, basically treats the workers like the enemy. It's a classic example of how fear and control can backfire, especially in a world where information flows so freely.
So while Victor's battening down the hatches and bracing for impact, what's Evelyn up to?
Well, Evelyn, on the other hand, she sees the challenges in her division, these new regulations, the supply chain disruptions, not as threats, but as opportunities to adapt and innovate.
So even though both leaders are facing the same storm, their reactions are completely different.
Exactly, and that's where things get really interesting. But that's a story for part 2 of our deep dive.
All right, we'll have to wait to see how this leadership experiment unfolds. But in the meantime, think about how Victor and Evelyn's approaches might play out in your own work or life. Are you more of a control and command type, or do you lean towards connection and collaboration? Stick around for part 2, where we'll see how these contrasting styles fare as the storm intensifies.
Picking up where we left off with Victor, his factory strike is turning into a full-blown media circus.
Oh yeah, bad. You can just imagine the headlines. Workers revolt. CEO under fire. I mean, it's the kind of PR nightmare that could sink a company.
Absolutely, and Victor knows it. He's trying desperately to control the narrative, trying to spin the strike as just a case of unreasonable workers and painting himself as the victim. But remember what we talked about earlier about the modern world being this network of networks. He's up against a force much bigger than himself.
So how does this play out for Victor, Mr. Control Freak? In the age of social media and instant news,
Not well. Information is spreading like wildfire, and every attempt he makes to control the message just seems to backfire. It's almost like the more he tries to control the situation, the more chaotic it becomes.
So meanwhile, Evelyn is dealing with the fallout from the strike in her own division. Because remember, Victor's factory supplies materials to her team. So this strike is directly impacting their work.
Right, and she's got a real problem on her hands. But instead of panicking or trying to micromanage the situation, Evelyn calls a company-wide meeting. And she's completely transparent about what's going on. She lays out the challenges they're facing. And then get this, she asks her team for ideas.
Wow, that's a bold move.
Right.
I mean, wouldn't it be easier to just tell everyone what to do?
Well, it might seem that way. But that's not Evelyn's style. Remember, she's all about empowering her network. She understands that the best solutions often come from the people who are closest to the problem. So she encourages her team to think outside the box, to collaborate and come up with some creative solutions.
So what happens? Does her team come through?
They do, and it's actually remarkable what they come up with. Because they're not limited by a rigid plan or a fear of failure, they actually develop an entirely new production process, a modular system that is both more efficient and more adaptable to changing circumstances.
So they basically turned a crisis into an opportunity.
Exactly. And it's a perfect example of how an effectuation mindset can work in the real world. Evelyn's not starting with a fixed goal and trying to force everything to fit. She's starting with the resources she has available. Her team, their creativity, the technology at their disposal, and using those to shape the outcome.
That's such a powerful contrast to Victor's approach. He's stuck trying to control everything, while Evelyn is trusting her network to find a way forward. It's fascinating to me that Evelyn's approach, this connectionist style, it's not just about warm and fuzzy feelings. It's actually incredibly practical.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this new production system that they come up with, it not only solves their immediate problem, but it positions them for long-term success. They've basically leapfrogged their competitors in terms of efficiency and adaptability. It's a textbook case of how a more open and collaborative approach can lead to genuine innovation.
So while Victor's control-obsessed tactics are backfiring, Evelyn's company is thriving. And it's all because she trusted her team to find a solution. Talk about a leadership lesson.
It really is, but the story doesn't end there. The board is starting to notice the contrast between Victor's sinking ship and Evelyn's smooth sailing. And remember, the company is in trouble. They need someone to steer them through this storm. Who do you think they're going to turn to?
Well, based on what we've heard so far, it seems like Evelyn's the obvious choice. But I have a feeling Victor's not going down without a fight. What happens next?
Well, that's where things get even more interesting. And that is where we'll have to pause for now.
Another cliffhanger. We'll be back soon to see how this leadership showdown unfolds. But in the meantime, think about this. Have you ever been in a situation where someone was trying to control everything like Victor? How did that impact the team? And have you ever experienced the power of a truly collaborative environment like the one Evelyn created? We'll be back with the conclusion of this leadership saga in part 3. Okay, so we're back for the final chapter of From Chains to Wings. And last we left off, the board was starting to see some cracks in Victor's leadership style. While Evelyn's approach was gaining traction, it's like we're watching this real-time experiment on leadership unfold.
Yeah, it really is. And the stakes are getting higher. The company's future is hanging in the balance. And the board needs to make a choice. Who do they trust to lead them out of this mess?
So what does Victor do? I mean, he's finally realized that his approach isn't working?
Well, if you're hoping for a dramatic redemption arc, I think you might be disappointed. Victor, true to form, doubles down. He senses he's losing control, and he starts playing dirty.
Oh, no. What does he do?
Well, he starts spreading rumors, planting seeds of doubt about Evelyn's competence. He even tries to sabotage some of her projects. It's classic, if I can't win, I'll make sure you lose too mentality.
That's so frustrating. I mean, here she is trying to save the company.
Oh.
And he's busy undermining her at every turn. It's like some people just can't handle change.
It's true. It happens more often than you think. People in positions of power feel threatened when the old ways of doing things are challenged.
So how does Evelyn handle this? Does she fight fire with fire?
No, Evelyn's smarter than that. She knows that getting dragged into a mudslinging contest with Victor would only hurt the company. So she focuses on what she does best, connecting with people, building trust, communicating her vision for the future.
So she rises above the drama.
Exactly. She holds a series of town hall meetings, not just with her team, but with the entire company. And she addresses Victor's accusations head on. But she does it in a way that focuses on the facts, the successes that her team has achieved, her plans for the future. And she emphasizes the importance of collaboration and adaptability.
It's like she's taking a page out of a modern political playbook. Transparency and authenticity rather than spin and manipulation.
And it's effective. The board, who had initially been swayed by Victor's fear-mongering, they start to see Evelyn in a new light. They see her honesty, her competence, her genuine passion for the company.
So the tide is turning in her favor. But what about Victor? Does he just give up?
Not exactly. He makes one final desperate attempt to regain control. He calls a board meeting, and he presents this grand plan to acquire a major competitor, arguing that this will consolidate their market power and eliminate the threat of disruption. It's a classic power play.
Okay, but is it a good idea?
Well, on the surface, it might seem like a bold move, but remember, Victor's operating from that old cause and effect mentality. He's trying to force an outcome, to control the market through sheer size and dominance. But the world doesn't work that way anymore. It's too interconnected, too complex.
So how does Evelyn respond?
Well, instead of trying to counter Victor's plan with a power play of her own, she stays true to her principles. She presents an alternative vision for the future, one based on collaboration, innovation, and adaptability. She argues that the best way to compete in this rapidly changing world is not to try to control it, but to embrace it.
So it's a showdown between two fundamentally different worldviews.
It really is. And in the end, the board votes in favor of Evelyn's vision. They see that her connectionist approach is the only way to navigate the complexities of the modern world.
Wow, that's a huge victory for Evelyn.
It is. Victor, defeated and disillusioned, leaves the company. And Evelyn steps into her new role as leader, guiding the company toward a future built on trust, collaboration, and a deep understanding of the power of networks.
This has been such a fascinating deep dive. It's not just a story. It's a blueprint for leadership in the 21st century.
It really is. It shows us how crucial it is to embrace change, empower people, and build a culture of trust and collaboration.
And it highlights the incredible impact that technology is having on the way we work and interact. It's not a tool for control. It's an enabler of connection and innovation. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a thought. Think about your own work or life. Are you clinging to outdated ideas and trying to control everything like Victor? Or are you embracing change, building connections, and empowering your network like Evelyn? The future belongs to those who can adapt, collaborate, and innovate.
Well said. The story of From Chains to Wings is a powerful reminder that the most effective leaders are those who can let go of control, empower others, and embrace the complexity of the modern world.
Thank you for joining us on this journey of leadership and discovery. We hope you found it insightful and inspiring. Until next time, keep learning, keep connecting, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible.